Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Steve Pitt. I'm the leader of the City Council and I'll be chairing this meeting. A little bit of housekeeping. Safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. See, this hasn't been adapted for this room because unless there's an extra gallery I'm unaware of, there isn't one. But that's fine. Do not attempt to use the lifts and assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be recorded and broadcast on the website, including those making deputations, although I'm not aware of any. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they are finished. We have all read the reports, so officers, please just highlight any developments that have occurred since publication or key themes that you think it is important to draw to the attention of the watching public. There have indeed been no deputations received today. I'm just aware this is on the verge of whistling, so I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Starting off then with any apologies for absence.
We've got David Williams and Lucy Howard.
Any apologies from any Cabinet members? I think we've got one from Ian Holder, have we not? Apologies from Councillor Ian Holder. Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? No. Okay, so before we actually start the meeting proper, we'll just go around the table and do some introductions, starting with Susie.
Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education and Deputy Leader.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance.
Ian Maguire, Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Growth.
Sally Scattergood, Assistant Director of Housing. Claire Hardwick, Head of Private Sector Housing.
Andy Biddle, Director of Adult Social Care.
And can we go behind you now, Andy, but you'll have to shout, guys.
Commissioning and Partnership Manager, Culture, Leisure and Regulated Services. Claire Watkins, Business Manager, Culture and Leisure. James Harris, Senior Local Resource Officer.
And that's fine. Okay, Charlotte.
Charlotte Smith, Assistant Director of Corporate Services.
Peter Bell, City Solicitor.
James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Mark Sage, Tax and Poverty Coordinator.
Gerald Byrne Jackson, Cabinet Member for Transport.
Kimberly Barrett, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Greening the City.
Darren Sanders, Cabinet Member for Housing and Tackling Homelessness.
Matthew Williamson, Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing, Health and Care.
Yeah, Councillor Leon, Cabinet Member for Resources, which also covers artificial intelligence. And we need a bit along the table there.
Right. Thank you, everyone. We've also got Josh from the news with us today, who's having a busy day here at the Civic because he's already been covering the planning inquiry downstairs earlier on. Okay, item 3, record of previous decision meeting Cabinet on 21st of March. Members, have you reviewed the minutes of that meeting? And if yes, do I have a proposal to accept them as a true record?
Happy to propose.
So, proposed Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Sanders. Item 4, fee structure for additional licensing scheme for houses in multiple occupation in Portsmouth, which takes us over to Claire Hardwick to present, please. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. So this report follows the report on the 22nd of November 2022, where Cabinet considered additional licensing for houses in multiple occupation, and through that report made the decision to introduce a citywide designation for additional licensing, which will commence on the 1st of September. And the purpose of this report is to present the finalised fee structure for the additional licensing scheme in advance of the start of that, and it's as outlined in the report.
Okay. Councillor Sanders, your portfolio, any comments?
Well, thanks for that. Steve, yeah, this is a below inflation increase in the licence fees, which reflects the changed circumstances from where we were in September when Cabinet decided to do this. This remains a key aspect in trying to make sure that we can deal with bad landlords and reward good ones, and also try and deal with the many issues that we get raised constantly with us with regards to HMO licensing. I've had a couple of issues raised with me, which I just want clarification from the officers on. The first is that many people say that we don't have enough people to try and deal with the problems that we've got. And I've seen in reports previously that we may need up to 40 full-time equivalent people to deal with the extra licensing that's being put forwards. Are they going to be recruited in a staged basis as per the demand, or are we just going to recruit 40 all at once?
So the original report in November outlined that we might need up to 40 full-time equivalent officers to fully administer the scheme. And that's based on various different roles, so administrative staff, officers going out and inspecting the properties, as well as the management support and supervision for the scheme. But that was based on a number of variables that we still don't know the full extent of. So the exact number of HMOs in the city, and also the breakdown of the new tiered system, how many licenses will be issued for 1 year, 2.5 years, and 5 years. So that's quite a crucial thing to understand how many staff we will need from the beginning of the scheme. Properties that have a 1-year licence will be inspected annually, and therefore we would need more staff for the more properties that are given a 1-year licence. The intention has always been to recruit for a core number of staff from the beginning of the scheme to allow us to process the licence applications and start doing the priority inspections. Once we have a full idea of the number of HMOs that are licensed under the scheme and what tier of licence term they fall into, we can go for further recruitment, understanding the full demand for the number of staff that we need for the scheme.
Okay, so I mean, that's reasonably clear. That sounds like 40 people will not be in place from the start.
Absolutely.
It'll reflect essentially how many homes we've got, because we know there are slightly different numbers depending upon what database you look at.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The second bit is that we've said Cabinet has agreed that the scheme goes live on September the 1st. Having introduced this scheme previously in 2013, I know that it was difficult to do on time, just because of the sheer numbers, the sheer amount of paperwork and so on. What will be the situation with regards to what is being done to make sure we can deliver September the 1st, and what sort of things are we looking at on September the 1st? I mean, is the case of everybody's licences are going to be ready on September the 1st? And if that's not the case, what is the position? Or are we going to have a grace period as we did in 2013, whereby we knew not everybody could do it because some of the lettings agents were abroad and all that stuff? So is there going to be a grace period, or what? And what will be the consequences?
So applications for the new scheme will be taken electronically through an online portal system, which will open from the 1st of September, and there will be a grace period. We will allow a period of up to the beginning of December to allow landlords an adequate time to make those applications, and we anticipate that landlords will want support and help through that process. For many, it will be a new process that they've not been through before. So the team are providing lots of communication to landlords. We've got a further communications plan starting from next week, actually, with various activity to make sure that landlords are fully prepared and understand what they need to do for the scheme. The website already has an abundance of information actually about what they can be doing right now to prepare for making their application, exactly what information they'll need to have ready, what documentation they'll need as part of submitting their application. And we have various ways that they can contact the team with specific questions. We're compiling those questions that we're receiving, and we're updating frequently asked questions on our website as well. So I think that there's a lot of activity that has been happening up until this point to try and prepare landlords for what is coming, and there'll be a lot more activity coming between now and the 1st of September as well.
No, I think that's a reasonable compromise. I mean, we know the reason this is here is because HMOs are 3 times more likely to have the worst possible hazards than the rest of the private rented sector. So we know we have to do something, but we've got to try and do it in a balanced way that rewards good landlords and tenants and punishes bad ones, which I think the scheme does. So I'm happy to recommend this below inflation increase in the fees reflecting current financial circumstances. Steve.
Thank you, Darren. Lee?
Yeah, I just want to reflect on the kind of history and the context of HMOs. And I remember I used to watch on television Love Thy Neighbour, and a really good comedy programme about people who lived in a big house. They all interacted together and shared the house almost as a family. So HMOs...
I think, Councillor Hunt, you mean Man About the House.
No, was
Yes,
it Man About the House?
You definitely
Man About the House, that's right. That's right.
You definitely do, mate.
Yeah, you're right.
I watch both.
Well, no, I think that one too. But anyway, the point was HMOs have been around for a long time. And I think we have to understand why we're considering this report. And that's because of a failure of housing policy since the war. People, you know, in all sorts of places, people don't like HMOs. We all know that. That's a given fact. But they are a valuable part of the city's housing. And they house people who are police officers, nurses, all sorts of professional people, young solicitors. They choose to live in shared housing, so they are important. But also controlling and regulating them in the way that this administration and our previous administration has done it has been hugely commendable, driving up the standards of HMOs in all sorts of different ways, through licensing and through controlling them through the policy, the so-called 10% policy, which Portsmouth was the first one to adopt, I think, and lots of other councils have followed us. So this here amounts to something, I've worked it out, and excuse me if I've got the maths wrong, but it's about 62p per day for a HMO to drive up the standards even further, to ensure that we have real regulation right across the city, so that neighbours can be assured that people are visiting HMOs to make sure everything's being done properly, and tenants can also be assured that they're going to be looked after as well. And I remember in planning once we had an application where the sink and the electric hob were all the same. So you would be using running water whilst it was connected to the mains. It was one that we threw out in planning because we saw it. But that sort of thing doesn't happen anymore, because we have a very good understanding of what has to be done, what people care about, both living inside the HMOs and around. So that's my contribution to this. It's a really good investment by the council and really good investment by the landlords.
Agreed. Thank you, members. Anyone else? Okay, are we happy to improve the 2 recommendations listed in the report on page 2? Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5 today is the Household Support Fund Cost of Living Support, contained within pages 33 to 50 of the meeting papers. And over to Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, so Mark Sage, Tackling Poverty Coordinator, introducing the report on support for residents with the cost of living, including the assistance provided under the Household Support Fund. So obviously you've seen the report, and it includes in there details of the schemes that we're going to be delivering. Probably the update just to give you is around the family vouchers, that schools will start distributing those later this week to families with children eligible for free school meals. And that's one of the schemes that's listed in the report. I'm happy to just take questions if that's enough of an introduction.
Thank you, Mark. Just an observation from me that the Household Support Fund is by no means all we are doing around supporting people during the cost of living crisis. There's lots of work going on across the council to help our residents in as many ways as we can, but this is specifically how we are choosing to allocate this particular pot of money, but it is alongside a whole load of effort that's going on to do all we can to help at a difficult time. So, members, any questions for Mark? Susie?
It's just more of a comment and a thanks to officers, because we made a decision that we wanted to get this money out to households via those with children eligible for free school meals this side of the summer, because obviously they've got them at home longer, and also before Christmas. And I know there was some challenges in the system in getting them out before the summer, so I just want to place on record my thanks, because I know there was an extraordinary amount of effort to make that happen, and it was the right thing to do, because 6 weeks is a long time to feed hungry children. So thank you.
Thank you, Susie. Darren?
Thanks, Steve. I think one of the other benefits of this system, Mark, is that finally we as a council are doing what government isn't doing, and that's actually helping the families who are just missing out. The families that are just above the threshold for a whole raft of benefits, but who we know are disproportionately suffering as mortgages go through the roof, as food prices go through the roof, and as energy costs continue not to go through the floor. And I think that priority, Steve, is incredibly important, because many of those people just struggle. I mean, these are the so-called just about managings that politicians spend lots of money hiring polling companies to try and help. And I'm delighted that we are helping them. I'm also pleased about the exceptional hardship grant and the way we can actually work with people to actually see if we can cut their costs, see if we can maximise their income, because I think that's missing from what central government is doing, but it's not missing from what this Liberal Democrat administration believes should be happening in Portsmouth. So I'm delighted, Mark, that we've included that, and I hope it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Lee?
Yeah, it's right to help people who are just about managing, but of course, none of this, I don't think if you said it, Susie, I miss it, but replaces the cuts to universal credit, which are causing terrible hardship amongst people in Portsmouth, low-income families, and it was a really bad decision by this government.
Matthew?
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Mark, and the team that are working on that. I'd like to particularly draw attention to the Warmth on Prescription pilot scheme, which is innovative, working with Public Health, Healthcare Portsmouth and Switched On Portsmouth. This is something that really makes a difference. We are ahead of the curve in this city in terms of social prescribing, and this is just part of that. It's a way, it shows the way that we work together to do things in this city when we do integrated, innovative things, and it's one of the things that we are continually having putting forward as this city, as this administration, and working with our partners in the city to make sure that we can carry on doing these kind of things and make sure we don't have interference from outside, which can dilute what we do. But that particular scheme is really important because it helps all the different organisations identify people, older people, and we think of it in the summer. We're in this nice warm day today, but it won't be very long until it gets quite cold again. This is the time where we can work together now to identify those people, to make sure that by the time the winter comes around that people are living in warm homes, and make sure that the older people in particular who are at risk of cold homes are not at risk of that anymore.
I think we all remember the comments of former Prime Minister when he was then Chancellor, John Major, saying if there isn't pain it's not working. I think it was rather unfortunate that our current Prime Minister, who is considerably wealthier personally than the previous incumbent John Major, decided that it would be appropriate for him to paraphrase that saying and add that sentiment. Fortunately, such thoughts do not run through this administration. Thank you very much, members. Are we, everyone's happy with the report? No further comments then? No? Okay, thank you, Mark. And just to place on record our thanks for all that you do. It's a huge amount and it's greatly appreciated. Okay, item 6, the update to the statement of community involvement. And who's leading on that item? Is it you, Ian? Yeah. Okay, over to you.
Good afternoon. This is the update to the Statement of Community Involvement. The SCI is one of the statutory documents that we have to have. It explains how we engage with people in respect to both policy making, the local plan being the key to policy currently being produced, and in respect of planning applications. So this is an update to a document you already have. A lot of it is covered by national guidance, the Development Management Procedure Order, for example, in respect to planning applications, but any variation is laid out in the appendix, which is the longer of the two documents. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ian. Members, any questions, any comments? This one seems sort of self-explanatory to me, and it is an update. Okay, so we've got 3 recommendations on the papers on page 3. Happy with those? Okay, thank you. That's approved then. Thank you, Ian. And now we're back to you again for the item 7, which is the local development scheme update.
Thank you. So this is another statutory requirement. We have to have a local development scheme or a timetable for plan making. Obviously this reflects what your team thinks we can get done in the necessary sequential order, principally again for the delivery of the local plan. In the local development scheme on page 5 you can see the timetable for the current local plan. Next key milestone being the winter of 2023 we use seasons, as government often does as well, to reflect that there is some uncertainty in how these things will wash out. But that is the intention to agree the next stage, the Regulation 19 pre-submission plan in winter 2023. The LDS though covers other plan making activities such as the Minerals and Waste Plan, which we do jointly with the other unitary authorities and Hampshire County Council as well. Again, a document you have to have and keep updated. Happy to take any questions.
Very clear to me. Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Councillor Hunt.
For another question, comment when you're ready.
Over to you then.
Yeah, I just want to thank Ian and his staff, you know, for working so hard on this and bringing lots of documents and other consultations together. It's really important to remember that the planning service here in this city is, I think, something like 40% down on staff numbers, there or thereabouts. And despite all these problems, they continue to deliver a very professional service for us to rely on. My only regret about all of this is if the government had not cut local government funding so much, I mean hugely, people should understand, yet still they see a service delivering in the best way that it possibly can. And I'm sure you're all aware that planning officers come in on the weekend now voluntarily to move planning applications forward faster than before, and so that threat of designation that was hanging over us is being addressed. I believe, Ian, that which one particular, I can't remember which one out the 7 that we failed. It was which one was it?
The non-major applications.
The non-major application, that's right. And we were at 68% rather than 70%, which prompted the letter from the Minister. And I believe we're moving up towards...
We were 63.8 and we're now, as of last week, 91%.
91%. 91%. What a turnaround. What a turnaround. Excellent work by the planning services here, who frequently come under political attack, I'm sorry to say, but up to 91%, and that's something to be proud of. Whether or not it'll stay there, I have absolutely no idea. But what I do know is that planning officers are working their butts off to serve this city well. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Lee. And I know that if he was here, which Anna, we need to add to the minutes, Councillor Hugh Mason did send apologies for today because he is at the St James's inquiry representing the council. So that needs to be noted. And I know that if he was here, he sent the rest of Cabinet an update report which reflected the update we've just had from Ian, and that we are all extremely grateful for the Herculean effort that's gone into making sure that that risk of designation has disappeared off into the sunset, hopefully. Although I have to say, I thought it was flaming cheeky in the first place, to be honest. Yes, but anyway, threat removed, hopefully, and progress towards the local plan, and done so cross-party and in discussions with other members to try and make sure that we're all on the same page is greatly appreciated. So thanks to the team for all their work. Members, can I ask you that if there are no further questions, that the Cabinet approve the updated LDS as set out in Appendix 1? Yeah, agreed. Thank you very much then, and thank you, Ian. Please don't feel we need to... Oh, you do your next one as well, aren't you? I've just noticed. You're on a roll, 3 in a row. So number 8 is the QA Hospital Emergency Department support. This is quite unusual, so if anybody's watching, I'll just ask officers, please, to give us a little bit more detail on this one, just to explain why we are here.
Thank you, Chair. Community Infrastructure Levy is the subject that we're here to discuss. And the purpose of the report is for Cabinet both to note the content and to then take on a recommendation to full council of the granting of just under £437,000 from community infrastructure funding to Portsmouth Hospitals University NHS Trust. The second recommendation is to write to Portsmouth Hospitals to confirm in shorthand that any future major projects take account of the costs of community infrastructure levy and the intention of that particular cost to contribute to local infrastructure when there's major developments in the community. So CIL, Community Infrastructure Levy, is a charge that the City Council has levied since April 2012. And under 3.1 and 3.2, there's some more technical information about how that is done, the rates it's charged at, etc. 3.3 and 3.4 talks about how that's split up proportionately, and the fact that there is also a CIL element that is awarded by ward, depending on the councillors in that particular ward, when there are developments in those wards. There is a list at 3.4 of those types of infrastructure which could be wholly or partly funded by community infrastructure levy, and one of those is hospitals. So moving through into 3.6, there's the breakdown of the charge of that CIL to Portsmouth Hospitals on the basis of floor space. This is in relation to a new emergency department that's due for opening currently in autumn 2024. There's some history in the rest of the report around a previous grant of CIL that was made to Portsmouth Hospitals, and that was in relation to a modular ward and a new car park that was constructed on the site, and in exchange for that, they're listed 3.6 are the changes and improvements that Portsmouth Hospitals committed to as a consequence of that CIL, particularly picking out the barrierless access to car park, electrical car charging infrastructure, and the rehabilitation garden that was put in as a consequence of that. So we had contact, and there's a slight inaccuracy at 3.7. We had contact in December of last year, but I put that as February of this year, where there was a request from Portsmouth Hospitals that the council consider a grant of CIL in respect to the development of the new emergency department for the amount that I've mentioned. Going through 3.8 and into 4, the reason for the recommendations, it's a new emergency department. It'll provide more up-to-date facilities and greater space for the residents of Portsmouth and the residents of Hampshire that use that emergency department. And on 4.1, the proposal from Portsmouth Hospitals is to purchase a scanner, a Quillen Prism CT scanner. I couldn't tell you what that is, but I know it's a scanner. With part of that money if the CIL is granted to them. Those are the broad thrusts of the report, really, the broad information contained within, and I draw your attention as well from section 7 onwards, finance comments around the fact that this amount of community infrastructure levy has not been depended upon for this year's capital budget by the council. However, it does mean that the capital budget for 24-25 would be lower by that amount. Happy to take any questions.
Understood, Andy. Thank you very much. Before I go to members, Ian, anything from because community infrastructure levy kind of sits with your area, anything you want to add?
The only thing to add, and just for clarity, it's well out and has been mentioned, obviously there is a proportion of the total monies that the hospital will be seeking that 437,000 from the Central Council. A separate application process will be followed, as members are aware, to apply to the ward pots, the neighbourhood CIL slice, and that will be commenced dependent on today's outcome and led by the planning service.
Thank you for that extra clarity. Chris, any finance comments you wanted to add that haven't been covered by Andy already? Okay, thank you very much. Members, any comments? Matthew?
Thanks Stephen, and thanks for the report. We're here again. So we've had this before, where we've had a request for SIL, effectively corporate SIL, to what the hospital regards as almost a reimbursement. Just as an explanation, which I think Ian is alluded to in the report, is that this is what we call a SILable development. So you have to pay SIL, because any development, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a public sector, whether it's private sector, does have impact on infrastructure, and therefore SIL is payable, which is completely correct, because no matter whether, and this is the same for things like schools and other things as well, because it does have an impact on infrastructure, even if it's short term while building takes place. So in discussion about this, and because this has happened again, and this was something we had some misgivings about before, because this is effectively a cost shunt. This is a cost shunt from national governments to local governments. We get SIL paid on development costs, which help us with our infrastructure, which enables us to do things, as Ian's just been mentioning, about what we can spend on capital schemes more generally within the city. But because government doesn't fund the hospital properly to take account of the SIL, it means that instead of them getting the money from Century, and then they wouldn't have to ask for this money, they have to ask for it from us instead, to enable them to do what they need to build the new A&E department, and indeed for this new scanner that they want to put in there, which is going to be a benefit not just for Portsmouth, of course, but for the surrounding area. But because the hospital falls within Portsmouth, it falls upon us. It doesn't fall upon Hampshire, doesn't fall upon the districts and boroughs next door, Havant, Gosport, Fareham, East Hants and Winchester, and Fareham, if I didn't mention that before. It falls upon Portsmouth because the hospital's here. So I draw attention to the third recommendation, which is writing to the Hospital Trust to confirm that SIL is part of the expected infrastructure cost of any significant project developments, and is a levy to compensate for the full range of additional public infrastructure requirements that will arise from developments and will fall to the council. The part of the NHS responsible for resourcing any future funding allocation for major projects locally should therefore include any future SIL contribution as part of the budget it provides for the projects. That is our third recommendation. I am happy with doing this now, but we cannot have this happen again. We are in straitened financial times. Central government doesn't have to set a balanced budget. We do have to set a balanced budget. We have no choice. Government can borrow until the cows come home. They can print money. They can do anything they like. But they expect local government to spend money that they cannot be bothered to supply to the NHS. The government talks endlessly about they give money to the NHS, they invest everything they need, they're increasing funding, but what are they doing? They're robbing local governments because they cannot be bothered to properly fund infrastructure development, much needed infrastructure development. We need this A&E, we need this scanner in Portsmouth, we need the infrastructure in Portsmouth and South East Hampshire, but we are being lent on through no fault of of QA. I can understand where they're coming from. They just need the money to make sure they can do their infrastructure properly, which is going to be a benefit to everyone. But central government should be funding that with that in account. So I approve the recommendations, but I particularly draw that attention to recommendation 3, which is to empower Portsmouth University Hospital Trust to go back to the NHS and tell them, if we do any other infrastructure spending, you need to cover those costs, because the council, because it might come to the stage where the council said, I'm sorry, we can't afford that. We've allocated this funding for other things and we can't afford it. And then Portsmouth and its surrounding area is going to lose out on much needed infrastructure. So central government has to step up for this. Central NHS has to step up to this and stop leaving it to local government to pick up their financial pieces. And as Councillor Hunt has already mentioned this in this meeting, central government has already caused huge amounts of issues with local government finance in the last year and 2 years. We don't want this to happen again, and they should pick up the pieces and do what's right. So happy to support recommendations, but especially happy to support recommendation 3.
Thank you, Matthew. Lee?
Yeah, Councillor Winton makes really good observations, doesn't he, about the outlying areas not contributing to this, not because they don't want to, I suppose, but because that's just how it is. That's how the regulations are, not their fault and not the QA's fault, as you say. But as also just reinforced what he said, this is basically giving them their money back. But it's really important to do because most of us here use the QA, and it's a good hospital. And what is really pleasing is that by doing this, and we've been planning for this, not just yesterday or the day before, but for a long time. And this administration, one of the reasons it's not in the same difficulties, financial difficulties as, say, Hampshire or Southampton or other councils that we see around the country, is that we plan and we sit down with officers and we work out sometimes years ahead. And this has been, we've been considering this, I think, for what, 3 or 4 months now, something like that. So it's not suddenly come upon us, but we know what's happening, we know why, the good we're going to do with this money. And it's also important that people understand that this scanner, which we'll be helping towards, will significantly contribute to the improved care and patient outcomes. Nothing could be more important to us as people of Portsmouth is the care and the well-being and the health of the people that we help to serve and look after. So it's a really important decision that we're making today. And I think, as others have said earlier on, the other success of Portsmouth is that we work in partnership with so many other people, the university, councils around us, voluntary groups, and the QA. And this is really important for people to understand. It's not just us leading on this. We're just a part of the machine that helps look after the people of Portsmouth. So I'm really pleased we're giving them their money back for every good reason, and really look forward to all the things that Matt mentioned earlier on. But I think his observation about the surrounding councils, that's something that an new incoming government needs to look at. You know, if we do get a Labour government or whatever, they need to start investing back into local government and into the NHS properly. As yet, I haven't heard very much about it. They seem to be just going along with the status quo at the moment, but hopefully that will change.
Thanks very much. Members, anyone else? No, I mean, Matt's very helpfully already read out recommendation 3, which is the long one, so I'm not going to reiterate that. There are other recommendations there to approve it and to note the content of the report. Are we happy with all of those? We are. Good. And then the second phase of it, which is the Ward Sill part, will then be triggered by that decision that we've made today. Worth noting, of course, that it's not just the central sill pot that's not going to go into benefiting people, but the local residents in Cosham who would otherwise have been able to do that, and we ought to be appreciative to the Cosham Ward councillors who had previously indicated support for this process. So thanks to them as well. Thank you, Ian. Andy, you're staying with us to do the next item, which is the Housing and Social Care Scrutiny Panel Response Report.
Thank you, Leader. So the report's in front of you. This was a scrutiny committee inquiry that took place in the last municipal year, particularly focused on respite care for those unpaid carers in Portsmouth, and specifically those people who care for somebody who's living with dementia. The recommendations for Cabinet are to note the recommendations of the review together with the officer responses, Under 3.3, the background, what we've set out there is the subject, the body of the review, the evidence that was looked at, and then we've moved straight into the responses to the recommendations. I think it's worth highlighting throughout really the acknowledgement of the care carried out by informal carers and the contribution they make not only to our city but nationally. We saw a recent report from Carers UK that talked about the value of unpaid care in this country being in the nature of about £145 billion a year, which is what it costs us to run the NHS. And that sort of brings home how much we depend on informal care in this country, some 6 million odd folk, and we think it's probably more than that, according to the last census. So the recommendations are varied. They're talking about support for informal carers and the ways of doing that, including practical support. We have recommended that the Cabinet approve all of those recommendations as adult social care. We're working on nearly all of them, I think. And the outcome that we'd like to see is a greater recognition of informal care and greater provision for informal carers in any of the decisions that we make as a local authority. That's probably broadly the body of the report, but happy to take any questions.
Andy, thank you very much. Councillor Matthew Willington.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks, Andy, for the report, and mostly thank you to Kirsty Mellor and the rest of the scrutiny panel for doing this work. So last summer, I had a conversation with Kirsty. They were looking to think about what scrutiny they could do, and it was something that we've been, myself and Andy, when I came back into my cabinet position, we're having some conversation about what might be a useful one, because they were scrabbling around a bit at the time and not sure what to do. So we mentioned carers more in general, and then the panel obviously came down on this particular one. And it's one of the great strengths of scrutiny panels is they can do a lot more detailed work than we're ever able to do, and a broader scope than we're ever able to do as cabinet members. But also look at it in a much more holistic way and actually go out and take that time to evidence gather, ask specific questions, and come up with answers. And it was great to see panel members at the Carers Count events in November last year, where we relaunched our carer strategy, and also on a personal level, in my now former job when I worked for Silent Minds, speaking to carers at the activity group of Reminds up in Cosham, and that was really good to enable people to have that interaction and actually torpedo some assumptions, because that's one of the things about when you ask these questions, and I think this is one of the great things again about scrutiny panels, is you can ask questions but the answers you get might be, well, that's not the case at all. Actually, it's something completely different, and actually that's not what we've got the concerns about, it's something else. And that really does come out in that report. And so the report that they've done from the scrutiny panel really does reflect what carers have told them. And it's really, really helpful for us within the community wellbeing, health and care part of the council, within Andy's adult social care department, within the Carers Centre, which is part of that, but also for us as a cabinet, as Andy's just said about what carers do and the value they are. I always say carers, if we didn't have informal carers, non-paid carers, our entire society would fall apart. They are the absolute core of our society, and they are the people that I am the most proud of in this country, because without them we would not be able to do anything. So that really captures this. I'm really pleased to accept the recommendations of the report, and I think it gives us a lot of things that we can really aspire to, having heard from the horse's mouth about what is really important to carers in the city.
Thank you, Matthew. Lee.
Yeah, so that people, I mean, I always like to humanise this. As far as we're concerned, we're not some sort of group that sits here and looks at things. I think the majority of the cabinet here are informal, today at least, are informal carers. I most certainly am. Kimberly, your mum, Susie. And Gerald certainly used to look after his mother too. So all these people that I'm talking about, they have dementia. So, and it's a growing, I hate to use the word problem, it's a growing issue for us all to deal with. And without these carers and our obvious concern for them, represented on behalf of the council through this scrutiny report, shows how much we understand, we empathise and we do care, not least because we are part of that. The officers here, I bet there's half of you have probably got people that you're caring for with dementia, which is why, again, we need to go back to the previous report and invest in our local services, particularly at QA and in social services, which is why I hope when an incoming Labour government recognises this, and that we must make sure that we put pressure on the people who get elected to fund social care much better than now. We've been looking for this for years, and to put mental health on an equal footing, because dementia is a mental health problem. So that needs to go on to an equal footing. Yeah, I can hear you. That needs to go on equal footing as the everyday care that we see. That's really important. There's something that our party tried to do when it was in coalition government, but unfortunately we didn't get our way.
Thank you, Lee. Susie?
Just a quick point that I've said before, that I think this is a really good report, and I think it's really great that people were listened to. But we, not just on this issue, but on all issues, need to make sure that when we listen to those people, it doesn't just go into a policy document, that we continue to listen to them as we roll out our good intentions through our policies.
Thank you very much. So in summary, a good piece of scrutiny done well and of real use, and already being implemented to make changes. And can we thank not just the panel, but Councillor Kirsty Miller in particular, as the Cabinet member referenced her in his remarks. So thank you, Kirsty. Nothing else on that? No. Thank you then, Andy, for being with us today. And now, by complete contrast, item 10, Economic Development, Culture and Leisure Scrutiny Panel, the response report for review of engagement with culture and leisure, pages 153 to 208, and over to, who's starting, Claire or Claire?
I'm starting. Thank you, Leader. So this report, you'll see we've had 17 points raised by the scrutiny panel, and we added a further 12 points for consideration and reflection. Just to highlight a few of the key points raised in the report, our library service applied to Arts Council England for funding for 2 tuk-tuks, which we're very excited about, which will enable expansion and a much broader reach of our library's offer to those communities who can't reach our city libraries. We're working with Portsmouth Crates Network, including the recent We Connect Information Day, to encourage networking across the cultural sector. The report gives a lot of detail on our broad range of free or low-cost activities provided by particularly our libraries and museum services, including a range of options for accessibility. We also include a section on our Volunteer Futures Arts Council project and also our Conan Doyle project, which provides opportunities for social participation and broadening access again to culture. And we've also included a section on the operations of our contracted leisure provider, BH Live, towards health and wellbeing outcomes in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Claire?
Nothing specifically to add other than I'm here to support Claire with any specific questions members may have.
Okay, technology is playing up a little bit there. That's you. I'd pass, because they didn't know they were going to use the Portsmouth room at the point the meeting was sent, I think. So that's picking up somebody's, it might be my phone actually. It might be. I'll stick it over there. Okay, apologies for that. So obviously, as for anyone watching on live stream, apologies for the sound problems. But also, whilst I am leader of the council, and that's how I introduced myself at the beginning, I also look after the culture, leisure and economic development portfolio, and this report is a response to that. I think that the response has added considerably to the work that was done by the panel. I did raise concerns at the time that I thought the piece of work had been somewhat rushed, but nevertheless we will take it absolutely on board and move forward with some of the recommendations that are within it and see how we can use that information to better inform our work. So thank you very much to Claire. Yes, I'm going to, Lee. Thank you very much to Claire for her work on pulling this together and compiling the response. It's greatly appreciated. Members, any questions?
No, just a comment if I may. Of course, I years back now, seems like eons ago, used to sit in your cultural portfolio, and what we've done with libraries has been hugely libraries, theatres, building new swimming pools, yet we still come under a bit of fire for doing all of these things. If we weren't doing it, I would understand. But the irony is we're doing all of these things, and we're doing all these things because we plan well, we manage well. We make sure, thanks to Chris and working across the services, we plan to do all of these things. Now, I know this is a scrutiny report, and there's a response to what's going on in it, and the tuk-tuks are another innovative idea from our innovative officers who are worth their weight in gold, as I've said many times before. So what we do, particularly around libraries, we keep them open, we keep them innovating, unlike many other local authorities around us who simply close things. And I hope that even though it's not a statutory service, bits of it are, I think, but I think although it's not a statutory service, we managed to keep the funding going, to expand the service, to make it what it is today, that people can easily access, and it does so much good for the well-being of our city. As I say, you sometimes see on social media the council come under attack for doing these things, but I'm sure officers know just how well we do here compared to many other local authorities. So well done for keeping that pressure up, leader, and let's hope that we always continue to fund libraries, theatres, the arts, as the way you have been doing over the last few days with another matter which we'll hear about some other time.
Thank you very much, Lee. Appreciated. Members, anyone else? No? Okay, in that case we have two recommendations: that the panel is thanked for its work undertaking the review, and that notes and supports the recommendations of the review are set out in Appendix 2. Are we happy with that? We are. Good. Okay, thank you both very much indeed. Item 11 on the agenda today is another one. It's the Education, Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel Response Report for review with school attendance, and that's Mike, I believe. Dave? No, you're not going anywhere. Stay there. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. What you've got in front of you is a report which details the recommendations, outcomes from the ECYP scrutiny panel, which was looking at school attendance, but in particular a focus on the transitional years between year 6 and year 7, so going in from primary into secondary. And the background to this is we have an issue, a significant issue, where a significant proportion of children do not transition well, and where we're seeing absence rates increase as they go into year 7. I should add this is something which has been exacerbated by what has happened over the last few years. It's not something that's just pertinent to Portsmouth. This is a national issue, but the numbers in Portsmouth are significant and worrying. So I think it was quite right that the panel should focus on this issue. Within the report there are 8 recommendations. At the heart of these recommendations is the recommendation for a transition protocol for years between year 6 and year 7. That's on top of everything else we're doing to support school attendance, which is comprehensive, and we have a strategy set out for that. But this is focusing, as I say, on those transition years and making sure that we've got a consistent process across the city, because at the moment there isn't that consistency. We have 14 multi-academy trusts, we have 18 local authority maintained schools. They all have different ways of doing this kind of transition. And what we want to do is to have a city-wide protocol that's based on good practice and can be embedded across the city. We're doing a very similar piece of work in terms of the year 11 to year 12 transition years. So we're coming to the end of that piece of work around a city-wide protocol which has got complete buy-in, and we're hoping we can do the same with regard to this protocol. So that's at the heart of the recommendations. There are 2 recommendations that have kind of financial implications. So one is around the team of LA Link coordinators. These are coordinators that work directly with our schools. They meet with them every couple of weeks to track and monitor attendance, in particular the attendance of our most vulnerable children and young people, and that's been really effective and well received by our schools. We have a resource of 4.8 FTEs committed to that. And whilst the recommendation was looking to double the size of that team, we recognise that we're working within our current funding envelope, and that the important point of view from the officer's side is to maintain that level of resource, which we can do at least for the next couple of years. The other recommendation, which had financial implications, was the work we do around study bugs, which is a piece of software that we use to extract live data from all of our schools around their attendance. And that's been really helpful, particularly for our frontline staff, children's social care workers, early help, etc., working with those children. We want to continue with that. We have some funding for a further year. Beyond that, question mark. Although we are watching with interest a number of national developments, so the government are hoping to have a system whereby all schools sign up and provide daily attendance data. At the moment, it was in a pilot phase, and only about 75% of schools across the country are using it, which I suppose is a start, but it's not comprehensive. So at the moment, we will continue to rely on study bugs. We're also introducing a new education management system called Synergy, moving away from Capital One. That will extract live data as well from our schools, as we do now, but there's a bit of a lag. We're hoping that that system will reduce that lag, and therefore that could be a way forward in the future. So we'll review that, and for the next year we'll continue to use study bugs.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to go to Susie in a moment. We've been asked to note this agenda item 11 preface to the report, which is actually a letter from Councillor Ryan Brent, the last paragraph of which says, I wholeheartedly recommend all recommendations to Cabinet. Wish to emphasise the importance of at least doubling the number of LA Link coordinators and the positive impact that will be realised by this action. Yes, it probably would have a positive impact, and if we had the capacity within this year's budget to consider such a proposal, we would. We would also employ a whole bunch more officers in a whole bunch more different departments across the council, because that would deliver a better outcome for local residents, but we have to live within our means. And I do find it rather ironic that the chair of the panel specifically, not with the panel, but in his role as chair, is a member of the governing party of this country who's been slashing local government funding for the last 15 plus years. So a bit rich to say go and spend some more money on something. I think we'd rather have the money back that we've lost in the first place, and then we could probably do all these things that we would like to do. But we have to be fiscally responsible and work within our means, or otherwise we're in the same boat as Southampton and Hampshire. So, sorry, a bit cross, but I'm going to go to Councillor Horton firstly, because she's the Cabinet member.
Thank you. So often when Mike speaks at something, he says that I've nicked all his words, now he's nicked mine, which is probably a good thing because we're on the same page. No, just a few points to echo some of what Mike says, but also to reinforce the point that Steve has said, is I think this is a really good subject to choose, and we all know that nationally, pre and post pandemic attendance levels are very starkly different, no less so in Portsmouth, where we were already doing a lot of work to try and get them to where we'd got them. What's worrying for me about it is the culture of going to school. So it's not just about how you measure it and the incentives, but it's the culture of going to school seems to have shifted. In fact, I was at a nursery this morning where I got into conversation with the nursery owner who was talking about the anxiety of parents which is stopping their kids going to nursery. And so we know that the COVID had a massive impact on people's mental health, not just children's but adults. And I think this is why this is a really good piece of work, because if you don't get the culture of going to school right when they go from primary school, where they're very much wrapped around, into secondary school, then we're going to have real significant problems. So good subject. I just want to pick up on this because I've raised it before. It's about £175,000. I think in scrutinies, if we all went, it's been a long time since I was on scrutiny, thank goodness, because I prefer to be a cabinet member, but if we could all have a sort of magic money tree to suggest what the council could do differently, then it would be a whole different exercise. What I take from it on a positive note is two of the areas that we invested heavily in and were innovative in, particularly the link coordinators, which came in those very first few weeks of lockdown, where we looked at that link between education and children's social care, and we all looked for the silver linings of lockdown, and this was one of them. We were really quick to put these people in place. They are brilliant roles, and I would love to double them. But as Steve has quite rightly said, and I'm not going to the national politics, I'll leave that to him, but actually just looking at the purpose of scrutiny, then if we don't actually work within the envelope of money we've got, then I think it could make a mockery of it moving forward. So absolutely pleased that both study bugs and link coordinators were picked up as excellent ideas and resources, but we are going to have to struggle to keep them at the level that they're at. So other than those two things, which are resource dependent, I'm absolutely happy with the rest of it, particularly the protocol, which I think was a great thing to come out of this. And we have a very good history in this city around protocols, having the elected home education protocol. So we and our schools work really closely together compared with lots of other local authorities. So yes, on the whole, good. But we need some extra money from somewhere if we're to I don't actually even know what happens with that recommendation. I presume we can't actually go with it. We can.
So I'm going to ask the Director of Finance if a scrutiny report comes out in 12 months' time that strongly recommends that every house in the city has a jacuzzi fitted, will we be needing to follow that recommendation? Because actually this looks badly, I'm afraid, of gesture politics and undermines the huge amount of work that goes in from that team to achieve what they do in a very difficult environment, and I don't think that's where we should be at. But your views, please.
Thank you, Leader. Of course not. And it's a matter of good governance to stay within the budget that actually full council set you, and full council set all of the cash limits for every portfolio, and no cabinet member has the authority to exceed their cash limit. That is a council resolution.
So if anyone was watching and hoping for a jacuzzi report next year, it's not happening because it's not real. Lee.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to understand. This is why I wanted to come, and I beg your pardon, kind of went before you, but I was a question before we got to comments. I don't understand. I thought in scrutiny, and Gerald put his hand up, sorry, I thought in scrutiny that if you did something that impacted the council's budget, you couldn't do it, or you had to identify where the funds would come from. So that was my understanding of scrutiny when I did scrutiny, that you weren't allowed to do this. So yes, it's all very laudable, isn't it, to put in that recommendation. I would like another 20 planners as well at the same time. Thank you very much indeed. It's where the money comes from. But on the process, a recommendation has come in here that if we were to accept it, presumably we would need to find the funding to at least double the number of LA Link coordinators, which of course we'd love to do. But how does that recommendation get in there? Does anybody know? I mean, what is the rules on scrutiny? Are you allowed to put in recommendations that bring a financial impact to the council?
Okay.
I didn't think you
Peter,
were.
any view on this from the city solicitor?
You can put what recommendations you like in. The reality of the fact is you can't go behind the budget. And the Section 151 officer just told you that. So, you know, the fact that you can come to that and you can think about it doesn't mean you have to do it. You can't do it because you can't go beyond the budget. It's a circular argument. That simple.
Right, can I go on scrutiny now then, please? It's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, is that really our constitution, that you can, a scrutiny panel can make a recommendation that imposes an impact on the budget?
You could ask, you can do what you like at scrutiny, you put it forward. You don't have to vouchsafe for it at that position. You've done the process, you're now being told that you can't go behind it financially. Now, perhaps it would have been much more appetite to have thought about it at the time you were making your recommendations. We wouldn't be having this debate. But you are entitled to look at all matters you see fit.
Well, it's changed since I did scrutiny, because I was explicitly told that you could not make a recommendation that impacted on the council's budget without identifying the funding.
So, Peter, can I come back to you? In the recommendations before us on this item, we're being asked to note and support the responses from officers detailing how much recommended, etc. Can we remove the word support, because otherwise it says that we will find the £175,000 when we can't?
Yes, you can certainly remove the word support. And going back to Councillor Hunt, forgive me if I was misleading. What I mean is you can say what you're entitled to say. That's your function at scrutiny. I don't ever think you can fetter your own ability to scrutinise anything. The fact is that you can't go behind the financial basis. Now, taking the words out, as the leader has suggested, is a neat way around that problem.
Yeah, sure, but it makes us look a bit parsimonious, doesn't it, you know? And I'm not happy with this process at all, and I think it needs to be looked at, Leader.
Okay, understood. Matthew?
I think Gerald and Darren will be for me.
Okay, it's gone on so long I've lost track. Gerald?
Can I ask, this is a preface to a report. Can I know if this has just come from the chair or whether it's been seen and supported by all members? This piece of paper here is a thing from the chair of that committee.
That's the point I was making earlier on. It doesn't seem to me to be representing the committee. It's a covering letter received separately from Councillor Brown. The letter is. No. We're not changing the recommendations, but the covering letter itself pulls out, in particular, the recommendation which has a financial implication.
So it would seem to me that it cannot be a preface to the report if it's not been supported by the members of that committee.
Yes.
It is a view of a single member, therefore it is useful as a view, but it cannot be adopted as part of a report, and therefore it is not a preface to a report. It is a deputation from an individual member.
Okay, understood. I don't want to thrash this out for ages, going round and round while everybody's expressing basically the same opinion, which is exactly where we should be. My recommendation is that we should, and Darren, I'll come to you in a minute if you've got anything to add, but I want to try and move us on. So, number 2, we delete the words "and support", and we reject noting or inclusion of the preface to the report. Is that acceptable, Peter?
Yes, Leader, that's acceptable.
Okay, so that's what I'm tabling, but now I'll come back to Darren.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a bit of context, as the only one of us has actually chaired a scrutiny panel in opposition.
Oh, please, come on.
Thank you. I'll tell him off later. And the truth is that, you know, under the Conservatives, when I was chairing scrutiny panels, you were told basically don't do anything that might involve any money. My performance was also monitored by the leader as well, which was highly impressive. Apparently it was good. So these things are quite rare. This sort of preface I would never have done, because we work together. It is in there. There is a response in there, which is fine. I would also say, Leader, as you may know, the budget was uniquely approved by councillors of all political groups that existed at the time, which is unheard of. And the doubling of LA Link coordinators was not in it, from what I remember. So I'm sure it happened this year. It is a bit off, It's a process, people have to put things forward, but we all agreed the budget together, which is unheard of. Thank you.
Appreciated. Mike, your mic's on. Did you want to add anything?
Well, just quick, just to say that notwithstanding the misguided recommendation in terms of those resources, just to say the officers found the recommendations, well considered. It was a good report, and we've responded to all those recommendations accordingly. And I think overall, not wanting to distract from what we just talked about, it was well received from officers.
Yeah, understood and noted. Just, I think the main thing to get across this afternoon from the debate and discussion we've just had is about setting precedents that leads to worse outcomes. Because the whole point of scrutiny is to add value and do exactly what Matthew was saying earlier on about having the ability to spend the time doing the deep dive. If it were to become a series of recommendations which were just a magic money tree wish list, as Susie referred to, then that undermines the whole process and removes its value, and we'll be paying the chairs £3,000 a year to do nothing of any productive value. There's been precedent for that. So that's not where I want to go. So members, are we happy that with the deletion of the words "and support" and the rejection of the not previously received preface to the report letter, we are happy to receive the recommendations? But before we do that, Matthew.
Thank you. And just very quickly, I was in my first 2 years on this council, in 2012 to 2014, I was the chair of a scrutiny panel. I went to a conference in the autumn of my first year on the council. It's for young councillors when I could go to those kind of events. And one of the things we did there was we went. It was about how to do good scrutiny, and it was a reminder to everyone there, whether you were in administration, in opposition, as a chair, or involved at all, that scrutiny is a tool to be used to, as I was saying earlier, to be constructive and work through, because you can't put any financial burden on the Cabinet, because the way our Cabinet system works has to go to Cabinet, and then Cabinet have to accept the responses. They gave really good examples of where scrutiny had been used as a stick to beat the Cabinet with, and the Cabinet had just completely ignored the entire scrutiny report, because they said, well, there's financial implications and there's no constructive thing there. The whole thing about scrutiny, and we've seen in our other 2 scrutiny reports that come today, really constructive, sensible, all-party working, and practical implications. Unfortunately, and as has been mentioned, there are some fantastic recommendations in here, but they haven't had the discipline, and I'm afraid this comes down to the chair. The chair has not had the discipline to say to the scrutiny panel, hang on a minute, we can't put any additional financial burden onto things. This is, as Darren has said, this was agreed by everyone. The budget for the council was agreed by absolutely everyone. Uniquely, it was a joint budget in the end, and we all agreed that. So to put any additional burden on there, unless you identify where things could be dropped, and that would be in discussion with Cabinet members, with the Cabinet, etc., that you say, actually, we think this could be done in a better way, let's have a conversation about it. So I think this is the point. This has been taught as good practice for well over a decade of how to work within a Cabinet system and have good scrutiny, and those things have not been followed in the way that this report has been presented, and that's a real shame. And I think that just needs to be a bit more discipline and understanding for scrutiny chairs about what good scrutiny looks like. And I can heartily recommend that they should go to the Local Government Association, have a look at their website, have a look at the reports that are done there, and do indeed attend events and get an idea of how good scrutiny works. I think that's something that I know we're doing the stuff about training for new councillors at the moment and things, and I think that might be something to include in the future.
Thank you, Matt. So I've tabled a resolution, but I would like to add something. Reading the preface that was proposed by Councillor Brent, the 3rd paragraph is thanking people who assisted as part of the process. I think it would be rather remiss to reject the thanks of the chair to those people who supported the scrutiny. So my proposal is that paragraph 3 be slightly amended to say that Councillor Brent would like to convey his sincere thanks to all the officers. Anna, you've got a copy of the rest of the paragraph there that will then be included so that we have noted that thanks. It would be unnecessarily churlish to leave that out. So is everyone happy with that and the previous resolution?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really not happy about the way that this has happened. It's come through a process through the officer corps. The recommendation 4, in my opinion, should not have been there. I don't know how it's got there, and it shouldn't have been here today, in my opinion. And it has kind of upset a rather good report, and perhaps it's just sheer lack of experience right at the beginning, rather than something else. So I'd like to, and I think that there needs to be some training around this, so that people better understand what it is that they can make recommendations about. I think that's really important. Otherwise, we shall find ourselves, as Matt says, rejecting otherwise very good reports for every, and all the good that they do.
Okay, noted. Thanks, Lee. I'm going to propose to change the order of the agenda slightly, because we've got to go through the outside organisations and member champion positions, etc., which might take a little while. So in the interests of moving things on, and because it's quite a brief report anyway, and she's been with us since the beginning, Charlotte, would you be happy to do item 13, please, which is the Spinnaker Tower sponsorship? And then Lisa, I'm going to come to you next, and we'll finish with the outside body stuff.
Thank you, Leader. You've all read the report, so just really briefly, it was to provide the Cabinet with a formal update on the background to the new partnership arrangements with Macmillan Cancer Support and our approach to attracting that brand partner following the decision by Emirates not to renew during the pandemic. Just sets out for you the approach that we took, including a significant amount of work from a specialist agency to look for a big brand partner. That wasn't possible due to the market conditions. The agency worked with us with a different approach, and we have secured a partnership with a charity brand, Macmillan Cancer Support, that will enable them to benefit from fundraising opportunities connected to the tower and the visitors to the tower, and it still enables the council to secure income to support local services. So since the report was written, the Macmillan brand is now painted on one leg of the tower. So unless there's any questions.
No, I just wanted to place on record, though, thanks to you, because I know you really stuck with this and made sure that we got a decent outcome. And actually, I think much better than just a corporate resolution to it, which would have undoubtedly put more money into local services. But this is an opportunity for us yet again to do something in partnership with the voluntary and community sector, which this is. Definitely is. It's a charity who are working really, really hard to support a lot of people within our local community year in, year out. And by forging this partnership with them, it enables us to shine a light on what they do, to attract attention, and therefore hopefully much more fundraising ability and profile for them, which is really important. And I know, having met with them, that they're really keen on this, and that they, if as long as all goes well, it's successful, that we'll be talking to them about continuing that partnership. So I really do wish Macmillan a huge amount of success in making this partnership work, because the synergies between what they provide for our community and what we want to see provided are so good here, and it's to be commended. We all know that the corporate sponsorship market utterly collapsed around the time of the pandemic. It was already strained, and then it completely collapsed. So instead of walking away from that opportunity, Charlotte, you and others with you pursued a different route, and I think that was really visionary, and that we've got a fantastic outcome. So thank you very much for that. Members, any comments? Lee?
Yeah, I mean, I've been around this council a long time now, so, obviously, I don't know if everybody was here before. Some of us were, that I stood up in the council and opposed the United Arab Emirates being up and down, and it was a fight. A real fight to get people to understand it was unethical. And what a huge difference to what has been achieved by Charlotte, the comms team and the regeneration team in getting Macmillan to sponsor the tower in this way. And they will, as you say, Leader, benefit from this enormously, because there'll be many more jumps and abseiling and goodness knows what now in order to raise money for, I'm afraid it won't be me. I am terrified of heights, and there would be a stream of water coming down the legs if it was me. So I do it in other ways, but I'm afraid I just cannot do heights. But to see this massive change, you know, and difference between the previous Conservative administration and ourselves is gargantuan, a very different approach, and I hope I'm sure people in the city will recognise that. So I'd like to congratulate everybody involved, including the leader, deputy leader, regeneration, comms team, everybody. It's a massively different approach to before.
Thank you very much. Any further comments, members? Dave? You've got a microphone that won't turn off but isn't working, so that's an irony, isn't it? Okay, thanks very much. So that report's noted, and thank you very much indeed, Charlotte. Item 14 on the agenda is the Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking Statement. This is something that comes, I think, every year, Lisa. Yeah, so it's pages 281 to 300, and over to Lisa Wills, please.
Hello. Yeah, I'm not going to take up much of your time either, since it's a very short report and you would have seen it from last year. It's not dissimilar to last year. Natasha's asked me to present it today, and I'm happy to answer any questions in a minute. The report covers the proposed modern slavery and anti-trafficking statement, which replaces the one that's currently on the PCC's website. And whilst the Council does have duties under Section 52 of the Modern Slavery Act, which are around supporting victims and identifying victims, this statement really addresses the duty under Section 54 as an organisational commitment to eradicating modern slavery and human trafficking. It's a Cabinet decision. It goes to full Council for noting, so because the Cabinet is essentially the board of the Council, that's why it's your decision, so it will just go to Council for them to note. So the report just highlights some of the progress against the improvement plan that we set out last year. The improvement plan for the coming 12 months is set out in item 11. I think the activities are very similar because we're on an upward trajectory with this, because it's not long since we've published our first statement. I think it's 2019. So we want to continue to increase the training of our staff and members so that we can all spot the signs and symptoms of modern slavery, which is very hidden, very underreported, and help people out of that trap. The other thing I'd really keen to do this year is to understand a bit more about what the extent of modern slavery and human trafficking in Portsmouth. It's quite difficult to get that detailed data, but we're working with the police now, who I think are going to be setting up a modern slavery team. I think there's a bit of extra scrutiny that's coming down from central government on them at the moment. So that will be great, and we can understand what's going on, and then we can develop some multi-agency actions and operations together with the police and the fire service and others. So that's really all, unless anyone's got any questions about it. It's not long and it's not difficult.
Members, any comments or questions, Lee?
Just saying, modern slavery comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and it can be right under your nose. So the more training that we have, the better to identify it. And of course we also will see in our own wards that the police and our enforcement teams and others going out and doing raids, but they also of course call on certain premises to make sure that the people inside are being looked after, and through this additional and constant training are able to recognise somebody who is a victim of modern slavery. So it looks like more work is going to be done and led by the police, which is very welcome indeed, because these people are very much in a desperate and miserable situation, and they're living amongst us, and if we can free them, so much the better.
Any further comments, members? Obviously a really important piece of our annual duty, and important that it's updated. Lisa, thank you very much for your work on that.
I'll send it to you for your signature before it goes on the website.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. So recommendations all approved? Yeah. Okay. Right. That takes us back to item 12, which is the appointments to outside organisations and member champion positions. We've got to a lot of pages here, but we need to work out the ones where there are contested positions effectively, don't we? And there's an awful lot of them. So from the top, page 1 is on page 248, I believe, of the meeting papers. This is 243 there, but the relevant page is 249 is your first one.
Can I just ask a procedure? Have we not got a list of those which are contested rather than...
Oh, you have done that, James. Okay,
yeah,
so that's going to save a lot of aggro. Thank you very much.
Otherwise, we can just adopt the rest.
Yes, okay. Over to you then.
Thank you, Leader. The report before Cabinet is an annual report to appoint members to outside organisations. Cabinet is also invited to consider appointing member champions. The appointments with nominations, as you said, are listed at Appendix 1 for Cabinet to consider, and I'd like to draw your attention to those positions which are contested.
Absolutely.
Namely, I don't know if you want me to take each one in turn or just list them all.
Let's do each one in turn and decide who we're appointing, and then there's absolutely no confusion.
Right, so of the contested positions, we have got the Aspects Visual Arts Trust with nominations from Councillor Atwell and Councillor Vallely.
Members, my recommendation is that we appoint Councillor Chris Atwell. All those in favour?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second is Fratton Big Local. We have got nominations from Councillor Brown and Councillor Cole.
Which page is that on?
So we're now on page 250. So members, you'll know that currently Councillor Tom Coles is the Lord Mayor, and I understand is therefore pretty busy this year. I would think that it's sensible to appoint Councillor Stuart Brown.
All right. Agreed.
Could we follow what happened last year? Is that Councillor Tom Coles is the deputy?
Deputy, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Next up is Key Cities with Councillor Mason and Councillor Shah.
Yeah, I think maybe a slight misunderstanding there about the role of that group. That's very much a voice of the administration in terms of its relationship with other local authorities around the country. Councillor Mason's done that before in his cabinet role, and that's the decision should be to reappoint him, I believe. Members agreed?
Yes, agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Mary Rose Trust. So the Lord Mayor has a seat ex officio. However, we also have two other seats, and we have Councillor Mason, Councillor Vernon Jackson and Councillor Vallely, who have put their names forward.
Members happy to appoint Councillor Hugh Mason and Councillor Gerald Vernon Jackson.
Agreed.
Thank you. Motivate. We have Councillor Horton and Councillor Heaney who have put themselves forward.
On my papers, I've got Councillor Horton and Councillor Fielding.
Quite correct. Sorry, Leader.
It's all right, just proving I'm paying attention. I do that to Chris sometimes, it annoys him. Motivate, I believe, Susie, you were the observer on it previously, and you're happy to carry on doing that, so nomination is Councillor Susie Horton.
Thank you. Patrol is slightly different. There are two seats, one main member and one deputy, but we have two members put themselves forward, and they are Councillor Barrett and it is Councillor Heaney.
Councillor Barrett, do you want to be on patrol since you're actually here?
So, Chair, this was done when I was on holiday, and I'm happy to do it if Kimberly doesn't want to. as she has 44 children to look after. I understand, but I'm happy for Graham to be the main person on it. It just seems to me this is the dullest organisation in the existence of the world.
Okay, members, shall we appoint Councillor Graham Heaney as he's requested to do the role? Okay, that's understood. James, are you doing these in alphabetical order?
I'm doing them as in the order of the.
So can I take you back to, please, to the New Theatre Royal Trust, which followed Motivate, where there is one vacancy and 2 nominations. My suggestion is that we appoint Councillor George Madgwick to the New Theatre Royal Trust. Need to send no. Okay, that's fine. Right, carry on. We're tag teaming quite well on it between us. We haven't missed anything yet.
And sorry, when we get down to it, the Port Advisory Board, I have new nominations to add to the list.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so a similar situation to Patrol, and having main member and deputy members. It's for Cabinet to decide who is doing which role. So Project Integra Strategic Board, Councillor Ashmore, Councillor Barrett.
Well, if it's PR, we've jumped one. So I think, but the thing is, Gerald, that the Port Advisory Board, that might just be a change. So there are 7 people altogether, I believe. So the Cabinet member for Pred or Port responsibility. So Gerald, you would be on that in that capacity because the Port sits with you, plus up to 6, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people nominated. Did you have an additional nomination?
Yes, the Conservatives would like to nominate Dan Weems. And I haven't had a nomination from the Independents, but if we do, I think it would be important to be inclusive. And their spokesman on transport is Brian Madgwick, but I have not had a response from George.
We can't do that because that would take us over the top.
Well, we could change the number on the. It's our committee. We decide how many we want.
Yeah, it's not an outside body as such, is it? So we could do it.
It's not a decision-making group. It's just advisory.
So can we add Councillor Dan Weems because he's asked to join it and there is a vacancy, and can we ask Dem Services to contact Councillor Brian Madgwick and extend the offer for him to join the Port Advisory Board as well, should he wish to do so, especially since Councillor Smythe is on there and she's a single independent on her own. And therefore it would seem relevant to invite the independent party to put somebody on. Is that all right? Yeah, everybody happy with that? Right, back over to you, James. Where are we at now?
So the Project Integra Strategic Board, 2 seats, main member and deputy. We have Councillor Ashmore and Councillor Barrett.
Well, that's up to you guys to agree which way round you want to do that.
Yeah, we decide, unless I've got it wrong, but yeah, because on the Cabinet one for that, I'm the main one, and Kimberly will go down to deputy. So we're just switching roles this year.
That makes sense.
Thank you. The Portsmouth Plastic Free Coastline Steering Group, Councillor Barrett and Councillor Shah.
You wish to remain on that, Kimberly, as the Cabinet member with direct responsibility for work on that. Understood. Everyone happy? Okay.
Thank you. The Southern Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, Councillor Mason and Councillor Smythe have put themselves forward.
Where are we now? 255. Yeah. So suggestion would be that Councillor Mason is the main representative, and are we happy that Judith Smythe can be the deputy? Yeah. Yes. Okay, so that's a continuation of the last municipal year. The rest of the ones on that page are all as nominated. Are there any more, James, or is that it?
There's no more contested positions, but I just want to draw Cabinet's attention to the fact we've received no nominations for the Hampshire Buildings Preservation or the Maritime Archaeology Trust. So those are currently vacancies, just for awareness.
Councillor Hunt, as the Heritage Champion from the Council, would you like to join the Hampshire Buildings Preservation Trust or not?
Of course I would.
I thought you might say yes. Councillor Hunt will take that. And then I don't think, from memory, the maritime one is we've got no obligation to appoint. There's just an invitation to do so.
Correct.
Okay. could we please contact them so that we don't just show up and say we don't currently have a nomination, but if one comes forward that we will let them know.
Thank you.
And welcome the opportunity to be updated on their work should they choose to do so.
Thank you.
Gerald?
Sorry, can I go back to page 252 patrol? We're meant to put a main member and a sub on. So if Graham Heaney is going to be the main member, can I suggest that I am the sub?
Yes, I think I thought that's what we'd agreed, but I might have missed it. Was that what you had, James?
Good.
Yes. Yeah.
And if we've got a vacancy on the maritime archaeology thing, I noticed that Councillor Valley has put her name forward for several things which have been unsuccessful for. I wonder if a phone call to her to see if she would like to be on that might mean we'd have something.
Very happy for the invitation to be extended.
And speaking of Councillor Vallely there, she has expressed interest to be the Council's appointment to the Partnership for South Hampshire Scrutiny Committee, which is detailed as a vacancy in your papers.
I don't think we have a problem with that.
No,
it has
I think
to be an opposition member.
It should, in good practice, it should be an opposition member.
Happy with that?
Okay. And the final thing, it relates to member champions. Councillor Gerarda has put forward a new potential position of disabled people member champion with herself as that champion role for your consideration, Cabinet.
So I also note, though, James, that she's put herself forward to be the Women, Children and Domestic Violence champion because Councillor Kirsty Mellor did not put herself forward, and that there is no other nomination for that position. So we can't have people being multiple champions of things. That's not a very good idea. My suggestion would be that the role really sits with Councillor Willington around that, but I'd like to get his view, especially since we do have Councillor Gerarda nominated for another member champion role.
Thank you, Steve. So it's one of these things, isn't it? When you're off for a year, things happen that you seem to have more knowledge of than the people who were actually here, including Councillor Gerarda. This is the second year in a row where Councillor Gerarda has effectively gone rogue and decided that she wants to nominate for things that do not exist and don't exist because of the protocol that was put forward that was agreed on the, let's look, 5th of January 2022. By the Cabinet Member for Communities and Central Services at a public meeting. And it says that, where are we? There's, on the protocol, it specifically says that it should not be things that basically fall within the remit of a Cabinet Member or indeed a ward member. So, so to have something for disabilities, well, that does fall under my remit as Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing, Health and Care. On top of that, of course, we are the only local authority in the country that has a paid learning disability champion, which is one of our honorary aldermen, so a former Labour councillor. It does seem like Councillor Gerarda is not aware of that, or somehow thinks that learning disabilities don't come under the remit of disabilities. So I think the protocol is that that if you think there's a need for a new champion, you should come and speak to the cabinet, at least a cabinet member who might be vaguely involved, but more likely have a chat to the cabinet and say, you know what, there's an area that we need a champion in, which doesn't come under the remit of a particular cabinet member, and we should look at it in that way. I was a member champion when we didn't have this protocol, and this was at the point I think we got up to about 10, and it was getting ridiculous, to be honest. I was a member champion for something I was responsible for anyway, because it was the mental health champion. And that, again, comes under the remit of my portfolio at the time. So that's the whole reason why we didn't want to go on the proliferation of member champions, and also to make sure that we didn't have things where there was conflict and possible things around there. So I do welcome suggestions, but I would draw the attention of all councillors, the protocol that was passed on the 5th of January 2022 for members champions, and to have that discussion in terms of that. And so I'll just do a, if I may, Leader, just do a reminder. A topic for which a member champion is appointed should be an agreed sustainable corporate priority, be an issue that can be defined in terms of its remit, i.e. not open-ended, and not cover a matter which is a remit that primarily sits within the portfolio of a cabinet member or could reasonably be seen a ward member responsibility. So I thank Councillor Gerarda's interest in disabilities. I have to say I've never had any contact from Councillor Gerarda about anything to do with disabilities in my cabinet, in my career on the cabinet, and since she's been on the council. And I would hope that if she has any issues around general disabilities, that she will approach the officers for the department and myself, but also, of course, if it's anything to do with learning disabilities, that she will be talking to Honorary Alderman Attrell, who is our paid learning disability champion and has been in that role for a number of years. So I thank the interest. I also do call on, though, that if any members of the council have any particular areas that we think we could have a champion, we have a maximum of 7. Again, that was in the protocol. And if it's going to be something that's cross-portfolio, as we've got in other areas, then please do contact us, have a chat, and we can certainly consider it, and we would welcome those conversations.
May I ask a question? Is it possible that Councillor Gerarda and, well, what's his name again? The fella, the alderman? I forgot his name.
John Attrell.
John?
Attrell.
Attrell. Attrell, that's it. Perhaps they've had a discussion between themselves, so she wants to take his role over. Do you know if that's what it is, or is she just trying to create, or is she...
No, he's paid, Lee.
Yeah, I know he's paid, but maybe she wants to do it. Maybe they had a discussion, think they can just pass the baton, but it needs our consent, I would have thought. But perhaps she'd like to approach him and ask him if she can do his job.
But actually, the relevant decision is that in order to sum it up, members, do you agree that the role proposed is entirely contained within Matthew's portfolio? Yes.
I agree.
So that's the end of that discussion. Kimberly?
I just wanted to echo and support what Councillor Winnington has said. I've been nature champion since I've been on the council, yet I find that although I'm happy to do the report each year, I just find that I'm repeating what I've been speaking about in my cabinet reports that go through, which can be seen by members of the public. You could get hold of them on the internet. So I'm always more than happy to report back on what my portfolio is doing and other portfolios that feed into it. But it's why I was quite happy to step back and for the nature champion role to be removed, because it's already what we are doing as a council. It's already being reported back on frequently, and I think it just really supports what Matt has been saying about the role. So I just wanted to make it clear that that's the reason why that's been removed, and I was quite happy to step back from that, because if anyone wants to find out information on what we're doing in regards to climate change, greening the city, biodiversity, my reports are all there. There's, you know, it's most months that I come and speak at them, and they're brought forward, so they're readily available for anybody who wants to see what we're doing as an administration.
Okay, Gerald?
On the Armed Forces Champion, there are 2 nominations.
No, there are not. I shall come to that in a second.
Lovely.
So, Heritage Champion is currently Councillor Lee Hunt, and there is a nomination to continue with it being Councillor Lee Hunt. All those in favour? LGBTQ+ and Young People Champion. This role has actually been contested for the last 2 or 3 years, when there's been sort of several candidates and the young people have chosen that person, but there is no contest this year. So, Councillor Susie Horton, are you happy to continue in that role? Thank you very much, and I know that involvement with that is particularly valued by those young people. We have an Armed Forces Liaison Champion, required to be a cabinet member, We can have a deputy who isn't, and you've done that historically when you were leader, Gerald, with Councillor Frank Jonas. So my suggestion is that you continue as Armed Forces Liaison Champion and that Councillor Tom Cole should be your deputy. Are you happy with that?
Happy with it. I think, to be accurate, it doesn't have to be a cabinet member, but if it isn't, we lose our
gold accreditation. We do.
And we could make a choice as a council that we were happy to do that.
We should not.
No, I agree, and I'm happy that Tom and I can work together.
Yeah. So just for the, just let the chimes finish. So in case anyone's watching and they think what's all that about, we get a gold accreditation for our work with the Armed Forces on the Armed Forces Covenant, because the Armed Forces Champion of the Council is a member of the Cabinet of the Administration. If we made a different choice to that, we could lose the gold accreditation, and we know how important that is to all of us. So is everyone happy with that proposal, that it should be Gerald with Tom as deputy? Cool. Third Sector and City of Service Champion, that was Councillor Stuart Brown, and last year Councillor Ashgar Shah was his deputy. Councillor Shah is the only nomination this year. Are we happy? We are. And we are deleting the nature post because, as already described very eloquently by Kimberly, it is entirely within her portfolio and therefore unnecessary. Doesn't diminish the work by any means, it just means she's already doing it. And the last one, Women, Children and Domestic Violence, that was previously taken by Councillor Kirsty Meller. I did go to the trouble of contacting her to see if she wanted to continue, and she doesn't. We've had a nomination, that is Councillor Charlotte Gerarda. Are we happy with that? Okay, in which case I think, James, that concludes that item.
Just for completeness, just to agree formally the non-contested positions, we've agreed all the contested positions and member champions.
So, yeah, so we've been through the member champions, and we've been through all of the outside body positions. Any that were not contested, are we content to take those en bloc as approved? Okay, happy? Cool. In that case, I think I'm right in saying that that concludes today's meeting. But comment from Susie?
I have realised that having proposed the minutes for the previous meeting was the only one I missed last year. So someone else might want to propose. I had read the papers, which was why they were familiar, but I actually wasn't here. So for accuracy, I think someone else needs to propose them.
I think Kimberly has proposed them.
I'm happy to propose.
I'm relieved that we dealt with that piece of admin in the room before somebody else noticed it. So, officers, thank you for staying with us today. Josh, thank you very much for being here to cover the discussions. Members, thank you.